All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare for a live trading session before you want to get into the markets. Pre-work that you would want to do before actually starting a session. Just starting out, one thing that you want to do before getting into the markets or exposing yourself to any sort of risk when it comes to trading is understanding when there's going to be high volatile times in the market. One way you can do that is by understanding the news events that's going on. So this is pre-London session. It's before London session starts in a few hours. What I like to do is see what high volume or high impact news is coming out during the session that I'm trading. So this is Wednesday, going into Wednesday, June 11th. And what I see going into London session is that there's not really a major news event for the European session. So I like this for two reasons. One, the market isn't going to be just fluctuating based off of a news event, because a news event can produce a sort of whiplash where the market goes up and down and kind of just spaces out all the price action that previously happens. And if you're not experienced, that could be a very confusing manipulation that can happen. But the second reason is that you can look at the existing structure and find just your normal points of interest within that structure. Now, if you're trading the New York session on this day, then there's some things to look out for during that pre-opening New York session hour. So for me, it's 7:30 a.m. and a lot of red news. You got CPIs coming out for Wednesday. Me personally, I don't really view CPIs as high. Like if you're familiar with Forex Factory, red being the high impact news, CPI to me is more of a medium. So I kind of look at it in that sense, but it is something to take note of. So now going into the charts, one thing I'm going to show you is how I set up the LuxAlgo Price Action Concepts, which is its smart money indicator. So if we go into the settings, just refresh this right here. Perfect. So if we go into the settings, I have your market structure fully showing here. Multi-time frame, equal highs, equal lows. I like to use those for points of liquidity. I don't really color the candles, and I don't show the internal highs and lows. You can, like if I want to add that, it'll just show kind of your higher highs and higher lows. If you are a little bit confused on market structure, you could use it to help you point out what is what. But I like to keep it a little bit clean. The other aspects is the internal order block. So I like to do the setting of 10, just to search out 10 order blocks within the frame of picture. And then your mitigations. But the main things that I really like is the fair value imbalance concepts. So I leave it at the default. I like to extend the box out. Sometimes I'll extend it out a little bit further just to have more visual clarity. And the premium and discount zones, I love those zones there because it gives me an idea of when the market is stretched, because the market is like a rubber band. So when the market is stretched, it likes to rebalance itself out. The premium and discount zones do a great job of giving you some areas in the market where the market may consider itself stretched, so you may see a sharp move to a certain side. And then the last thing that I like to make sure I have is my highs and lows. So for me, I like the daily, I like the Monday's high and low, and the weekly high and low. The monthly, you can kind of do if you're swing trading. I'm more of an day trading, so that's what I like to use. So that's my settings for LuxAlgo Price Action Concepts. And if you don't have it, I would highly suggest getting it because, like I said, it makes things pretty clean. Like for the most part, I don't really have to draw anything maybe outside of a Fibonacci when it comes to using price action concepts. Like if I want, I could even do like support resistance or supply and demand zones if I like to, which would be something else that you can add to it. But the main thing that I like to look for is those higher lows when it comes to buying. So you got a higher high, you have that higher low. So that would be a optimal buy point there because we had a break of structure, a consolidation, a retracement into a point of interest. So for me, my point of interest would be this sharp movement here. So I like to look out for where the sharp movement starts, look at the last opposite closing candle before the directional move. So if I am looking at this particular setup, hindsight's 2020, but between this zone of imbalance right here, so you see that zone of imbalance. So between this zone of imbalance and the opening of that last candle, that would be a trigger zone for me. And from there, I could even analyze it further. And you would have multiple points of possible liquidity. You would have the area outside of this consolidation here. Then there was a secondary consolidation here. So these are just different things that I like to see and look for my entries. So I have my break of structure. I have my kind of rebalancing or retracement. It could be a consolidation-based retracement, or it could be a sharp retracement. Either one could work out. I typically like the consolidation because there's more orders being built up, giving me more feel for the move that I'm trying to catch. But going back to the price action concepts, you see how the market does identify this area here as an area of interest. I analyze it a little bit further, look for the fair value gap. Now, if this was the live market, LuxAlgo would have indicated this for me, so I wouldn't have had to draw this box. But just to give you an idea of what to look for. So price action concepts is going to give you those breaks of structures. It's going to show you those change of characters. And for me, I'm more so just looking for breaks of structures followed by a retracement into a point of interest. That's all I'm looking for. I can do the counter trending moves with the change of characters as well, but you have to be a little bit more disciplined for that. But this is something that I tend to look for. So now, going into preparing for your live market, let's go a little bit further and see what opportunities is in the market itself. So what I like to do, like I said earlier, I like to look for that expansion and then that pending retracement. So for me, it's really easy to kind of spot that out. All you're looking for is just this little L-shape formula going on. Just from if a trade is going to happen soon perspective. If you're getting into the markets and you're just seeing that, there's no retracement, or you're just seeing this going on, or like looking at the markets themselves, yes, you may be able to find opportunities from maybe zooming out, getting into a bigger time frame, or looking for a smaller trade within the consolidation to catch some pips there. You can do that, but you don't want to leave your scope of frame to find a trade that you may not be as good at taking as another trade from a strategy standpoint. So I like to look for the break in structures followed by the retest. So for me, it's really easy because all I have to do is kind of filter out and go from that point. So, so one thing I see here is I do see the breaker structure here, but I have to be mindful that this was a significant low. So now you have a more of a bigger change of character that happened here. So you had the breaker structure, the retracement went deeper in the last move here during Asian session. Looks like there was some movement going on in Asian session. And now you have a change of character. So in that change of character, now I have that break of structure. Change of character is just a break of structure going in the opposite direction. So I have that break of structure, change of character going there. And now all I'm looking for is the retest into a point of interest. So the question I have to ask myself is, do I want to start looking for the sell with the market right now? Do I want to start looking for that? And one thing I have to be able to be comfortable with is understanding that this may be not necessarily a longer term reversal, but it may be just enough for me to win this particular trade. Reason being, there's equal lows here. So you have the equal lows, but it actually extends out to in that area. So what that means is that there is points of interest. There's points of interest as far as liquidity goes. So stop losses accumulating, or that were accumulated in that area. Or if people were buying into this area, like say people wanted to buy and the market is still going down, this would be an area, this price would be an area of interest for people putting a stop loss, because maybe they would put a trade similar to, like say, looking at this being a support area, like say other people looking at basic support, and they're looking past these previous equal lows, like they would look for a trade similar to that right there. So if people are looking for a trade like that, there'll be stop losses here. Even if people are going down and going right to the bottom of the support zone, people's stop losses will still be in this area here. So that's why I like that area, not as a place to put my stop loss, but as a place to potentially put my take profit. Because if I target the equal lows here, and then I go higher, my relevant low I can pick here, or I can be more conservative and pick here, or I can be more aggressive and pick this right here. I have a 3-to-1 trade using this last previous candle area and the imbalance as my trigger zone for my trade, and targeting those equal lows. So just like that, I have a potential trade that I can take. Now my thing is, I like to look at the market, see what's available, and maybe take 2, 1, or 3 trades, just depending on how good the setups are. My max trades that I'll take at a time manually is 3 trades. So 3 setups, not 3 trades, because sometimes I'll take a setup and do a twin trade where I take the risk that I want to use for that particular trade and just divide up the 2 trades, so that way I can maybe be more conservative on one risk to reward ratio, and maybe I can look for a longer term take profit with the other trade. So sometimes I do that. But just like that, I have a trade idea. I can analyze it further. I can say, if people like formation trades, you have this head and shoulders going on right here. So you have that head and shoulders. So just like that, people like to use that as a head and shoulders. Or if I just want to say it's a M pattern going on, there's different things that people like to use. If I want to analyze the entry further, I could look at the last relevant high, which would be this right here. Get down into my areas, and you see the 61.8 is around in that zone, in that same kind of trigger zone area. I could look at it like that. So there's different things that I can build my case with trading. But what I love about price action concepts, you don't have to necessarily do all that. You can trust that you can use the accumulation, you can use the fair value gaps, you can use the different aspects of the market to find your moves and go from there. So that's an idea. I'll leave this right here. That way I don't forget when I come back to it. That's my idea here. So right around in that area there. So I just keep going. So I'm seeing, let me zoom out. I want to have just a good scope on it. Zoom out. This is Euro Swiss franc. Not a majorly traded pair. But if I'm continuing, I can analyze this too. So we have your zone coming into here. This is not as nice of a trade as I would like. The only thing that I would see here is this last candle before the up move. This is why this is identifying that there. And then from there, looking for the retracement and looking for a move back up. Now, in my experience, I think this might make like some longer form of head and shoulders, because if you look here, you have this kind of going on there. So I can see maybe something like that happening, where it's not necessarily going to make another high, but it could potentially make just a last kind of rally before coming down to take out these lows. So that's something I can see with Euro Swiss franc, but not the cleanest pair. I'm not going to really look at a trade in that particular aspect. So I keep going. So I'm looking for my formation. I can easily spot visually. Like stuff like this where it's just an extension. Sometimes I like to go out into the bigger time frame, see if there's something at play here. Which potentially it can, but like I said, that's not as clean as I would like it to be. For me, I would like to see some sort of down move, get back down into here. Even when I look at the 1 hour chart, that brings it back into Monday's high here. And, people have their different levels. So you have a level here. People like the Fibonacci. They can look at that. The Fibonacci got the 61.8 around that level, which is also the 50% area of the fair value gap. So now you're looking at an area like that. So like things like, Fibonacci, fair value gap, 50%, order blocks, which is what these help you spot out, the order block zones, major price levels. So I don't really look at support resistance very heavily, but if there's one that's a very strong level that's respected a lot, there's a lot of momentum that comes from that area, I'm going to pay attention to it. So if there's major confluences like that, that gives me enough evidence to say that, hey, this might be something going on, that's something to potentially trade. So this Euro British pound, we could look for something like that, but then again, if the bigger trend is at play, or the bigger, it's not necessarily a trend, but if the bigger point of contact is at play here, you could get a bigger move back down to kind of continue that. So, because I have to be mindful of this 4-hour order block. So if I can't find anything relevant to this area, I'm going to zoom out. So that's what I'm doing here. So we keep going. So I like to make sure that the candlesticks make sense. So sometimes they get a little floppy as far as the orientation of how it looks. Clean that up. Looks like that move is already happening. I really don't like. It's kind of in between things right now, so I don't like that. So yeah, don't like that one. This one's not as clean. It can just like the Euro AUD, it can go either way. We have, let's see here. So we have an extension. You see there's nothing relevant in that area for me to judge from. So when I see that, I'm going to zoom out and see if there's anything relevant on the higher time frame. So here you had your weekly low as well as an equal low here. Looks like that's been breached. And now we're looking into what zones can give you that rejection that you're looking for. So if I'm looking here, I want to see if that area, because that's a price, gap, a fair value gap in that area. So let me click on that, change it over to my imbalance so I can stretch it out. And it looks like 100% of that imbalance has been mitigated. So now what I like to do is kind of go back in, see what that looks like on a smaller time frame, just to zoom in. So we have this significant candle here. It also happened during change of day, which is interesting. And then also around that same area is the last significant candle before the up move. So you have both of those kind of happening right there in that moment. And see where price is at. So price is right there in that moment. It's also being considered. You see here is a discount zone. So we have the market kind of getting stretched here. So this would be a potential counter trend opportunity because I'm liking the points of interest on the bigger time frame from the time frame I normally trade on. So the 1 hour is my home time frame. So I could do this one of two ways. I can look to place the trade now and just go based off of my risk to rewards. Or since it's a reversal trade, I could look for more confluences. So what that means is I can go down into a lower time frame. I can go down to the 5 minute or even the 15. I like the 15. And look for my setup on a smaller time frame. So what would that look like? So my setup is a break of structure followed by a retracement into a smart money concept point of interest. So if we get that up move, see what the significant areas are before that up move, get that pop back down, and then we start moving up. So I make the counter trend trade a trend trade on a smaller time frame. Something that you can do. So this will give you ideas of how to use Lux Algo. I just wanted to go through and show you different ways of analyzing Lux Algo and kind of comparing it with my trading style and giving you some ideas to win in the market. So if you don't have Lux Algo, get it. I highly recommend it. If I didn't have Lux Algo, it would make what I just did take a whole lot longer. But while I was explaining, I was able to identify trade ideas because I have Lux Algo. So definitely get it. And hopefully this video helps.